Hi, this is your host, Andrew Raffel, the founder and CEO of Baintree Wealth Advisors. And I wanted to personally welcome you to Your Wealth and Beyond, a podcast that will empower you, the entrepreneur and business owner, with the insight and information you need to effectively manage and control your personal and professional finances. My goal is to help each of you get your fiscal house in order so that you can take your business to the next level. I'm going to help you focus on growing your business, building your wealth, and most importantly, finding purpose in what matters most. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Wealth and Beyond. And today we have a fantastic show lined up. Today's going to be all about PR and how you as a business owner can work to get your message out there and do it effectively. And I wouldn't want to talk to anybody about this except my guest on today, Alana Cole, who is the founder and president of Vegas-based Advisor PR. And for well over a decade plus, she's been helping her niche industry, which is financial advisors, build their brand, perfect their message, and help to get their company out there to the world. So today's going to be all about PR. We're going to talk about the common myths and notions that many business owners have about PR and how to put together the right strategic plan to get your message out to the world. We're also going to discuss how to prepare for your first live TV appearance, whether it be local or national. There's a lot of things that go into it. And then lastly, we're going to touch on how to stay relevant and making sure that your message is getting out there, especially in today's cluttered social media landscape. Now, Alana brings to the table not only a decade plus in this industry, but she's an accomplished publicist, an author, and really a brand strategist, one that I have worked with over the years and I respect fully. So I'm very excited for today's show. I think you guys are going to get a lot out of it. Without further ado, Alana Cole. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank
I know
you.
this is long overdue, and you guys are busy this time of year. So thanks for joining us today.
Of course, glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So, today we're gonna go through a lot of great stuff beyond learning about how you came to start Advisor PR and some of the nuances in what you saw out there. But for the listeners, because I know your niche is working with financial services and advisors and really helping them define their message, build their brand, create that credibility. But, when we look at PR and we look at defining a brand, it doesn't matter what business you're in. It's a critical piece to getting your message out there. So as we start today, kind of walk us through some of the myths or the preconceived notions that business owners have in regards to PR, whether what they're not doing right or some of the things that maybe they're afraid of, and the benefit of really putting together a strategic plan to get the messaging out there.
Okay, that's a big one. So in terms of PR, I think that misconceptions, that you have to be very, very trained and prepared to be able to speak with media, which isn't necessarily the case. I mean, you certainly need to know your areas and the things that you want to talk about, but I would never suggest somebody just try to go out there and answer every single inquiry, every single question that remotely falls underneath their realm of expertise. PR is a great tool to illustrate. So to show by example how you could potentially help somebody or the benefits of working with you. And I find that a lot of advisors feel like they need to, if they're going to do PR, need to be available to talk about any topic that falls underneath, in our instance, the realm of the financial services industry. So you can certainly be focused in the types of topics and things that you choose to work with the media on. So I wouldn't let that be, I guess, an overwhelming reason as to why you wouldn't want to move forward with it. Another misconception, kind of tying into that one, that any PR is good PR. Not the case, especially now, with the web and the evolution of social media and whatnot. Things live out there forever. And so it's like the old adage from 50 years ago, any PR is good PR, but you certainly want to be protective of the types of things that you're working with media on. And again, just making sure it's consistent with your expertise and how you want to be recognized.
Well, that's like Google. It never forgets.
Never
right?
forgets.
It's just never forgets. It's out there forever.
I know. I almost feel bad for this new generation coming into the workforce with, the onset of digital devices in their college years and their 20s and whatnot. I mean, they'll be out there forever, right?
I know. I don't want to age myself, but I feel like I was the last in the generation where we got to high school and college with no digital technology. And it's so refreshing to think back that, not that we did a lot of things bad, but you know what? There's no record of it. And it's like we actually had to communicate with people. And, if you said, hey, I'm going to meet you at this restaurant or bar, if you weren't there, we're not going to see each other that night.
There's no way to get a hold of you.
But we're starting to see, I think, a pullback from this technology, and it's as raising kids, it's a constant battle that I think it's a never ending battle for sure.
Yeah.
So when you think in terms of so business itself, as they're in their infancy and they're trying to structure who they are, their culture, what are some of the advice that you would give to a firm as they're trying to define their message, defining their brand, making sure the public knows who they are, what they believe in, and how they can be a benefit to whomever their target market is?
Okay. I would tell people that you don't want to build a brand by accident. I mean, I find that a lot of small businesses or people just starting out, they have a good service or a good product, but they fail to identify how it benefits the people they work with or even who specifically they want to work with. So I suggest any small business should really begin with a business plan for the brand, right? And you just want to think through every single aspect of what your brand represents. So from the who, just the defining what that company name is, the tagline, a logo, setting some design standards, whether it be colors and fonts, just being very specific about what it's going to look like and represent. I mean, even to your URLs and a consistent use of capitalization and lowercase letters, when you're putting that kind of stuff on your materials, getting through and getting clarity on the types of people you want to work with. And I'm not just saying, they're 50 years old and they have $500,000. Again, going back to financial services, but what are their interests? What are their hobbies? What are their groups? What are their problems? What are the concerns that your product or service can help to solve?
Right.
You really need to get clear on all of that.
Well, and I think too, especially in a service industry, whether you're a financial advisor, you're a CPA, an attorney, even a chiropractor, it's, as you mentioned there, I think that's such great advice is define your avatar client. Who do you want to work with? Both, obviously, you got to, look at who can provide revenue for the firm. But then it also, especially in a service industry, and for us in particular, and the clients that you help serve in the financial services space, there's some clients I don't want to work with, right? Even though they may have the dollars that are there that can bring in revenue, if they're not philosophically believing in what we do and thinking the long term, we know that those people are not going to be with us over the long term.
Yeah.
And in any space, I think a lot of the heavy lifting goes into the beginning of a relationship. So you don't want to put all this work out there and then in 8 months they're gone because they didn't firmly believe in the value. And, on our side, maybe they were just looking at us on the investment side rather than the whole picture there. So, for you out there, make sure that you really identify those and clone those clients that you like working with. That's the first step in making sure that you build and brand that message the right way.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I'd even take that further. A lot of people have difficulty communicating the value because they themselves don't truly know, right? So even going into talking about the brand building and getting these core messages in place, why should somebody work with you, right? And I would get very clear in what those why factors are. This can start with identifying all of the different problems that your ideal client may have, right? That you can help to address. This would be, what are all of the benefits, the strengths that you can bring to them? Again, professional services. Are you investing in your education so you're always at the top of your game? Are you committed to a high impact customer service experience? Just get very clear on those why statements. So I think that, when you have that down and you can communicate that effectively, both in the written and verbal, then when people come to you and like you're talking about the challenging client or somebody that just doesn't see the value, you have those statements on autopilot, right? Like you're able to communicate it in a way you've thought through it all that they can then understand the value that you're bringing to them. Yeah, I see a lot of people just assume that you're going to understand the PR I'm bringing to you is going to create value. What do you mean you don't know, all the different other reasons why you should be doing it? You have to have those messages clear so you can communicate them effectively.
I mean, does that go back to the old adage in a sense of this elevator pitch, right? Give me in 3 minutes or 2 minutes who you are, what you do. Is that still relevant in today's world?
Absolutely. It's a little different. Now these are kind of your bite-sized messages on your LinkedIn page or on your Twitter, and you're still having those communications with people and they ask what you do. So I certainly think like having that high-level overview, not necessarily the service or the product, right? So I have some advisors would be, I sell stocks and annuities. Like that does not create any sort of interest whatsoever. But if you talk about the benefit of, I help people grow assets and protect their income for the rest of their life, or, something to that effect that creates the value in the service that's provided, that is going to get more interest than just coming out and saying you make widgets.
Right. And I think you said it, making it like personal, and you looked at what drives people. It's stories, it's humanizing something. And, from our side, when we came up with the tagline of you dream, we plan, we wanted to keep it simple, but then bring in what we're trying to accomplish and making that tagline that resonates with our planning process itself. So defining a message. Now, when you think in terms of all these things you're talking about, of the who, the why, who's your avatar client, you're obviously been in the industry for a while, and not just as an owner and builder of your firm, but prior to that, which we'll get into. But can a business, do they need somebody to guide them, somebody professional, like a PR firm, advisor, PR, et cetera?
I would say yes, but it's not necessarily when you're very first starting out. I think there's a lot of how-to books, a lot of resources. I mean, we personally have a blog that we update on a weekly basis that gives tips on different areas of your business that you could be focusing on. When you get to a certain point, so if we're going to the media side of things, absolutely. It's, first of all, it's the contacts and relationships that a media firm would have or a PR firm would have with the media that would take you so much time and energy to try to replicate. Number two, if it's an area you're not familiar with, there's that screening process, that barrier for you. So somebody's going to be able to tell you what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, in that sense. For marketing, there's a lot of systems or processes that somebody could follow, right? So if you're very clear with your message, you follow the format, you have a call to action, you're getting in front of the right audiences, you're being consistent with your message, things like that, then I think business owners can go ahead and tackle that on their own. There does come a point where a professional service provider can make things happen for you more efficiently, more effectively, and give you that counsel, that insight and expertise on marketing, on your brand, on your message that you may not be able to see for yourself. I feel like so many business owners get caught up in the weeds of their own company that they fail to even see some of the obvious things. And a third party that's trained to look at the marketing message and the effectiveness of strategies can really help you to kind of cut through that clutter and put a really strong plan in place.
Yeah. And you look at something that as a business owner, that they're not looking at things high level. They're not looking at their competitors. It's even as something as simple as what if they chose the wrong color tone, where a professional firm could come in and say, we know based on X, Y, and Z that color red in your business is going to have a negative effect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no way the business owner who's just trying to get their whether business off the ground, or they're focused on a successful business, but this isn't the world they live in. There's no way that they would know that that's going to have that type of adverse effect. So that's that branding and going through a process and making sure that you look at the competitors, the landscape, the wording, and that's where I think it's sometimes the investment of working with a professional is far exceeds the cost that's associated with it. Because if you make a mistake, going back and trying to fix that 2 years later,
mm-hmm.
that's going to be so much more expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Both on the visual side, what you're talking about, but there's also the trademark issues, right? With like company names or with any sort of like icons that you may be using with your business. So I don't think people just starting out or, working in their business are thinking about those things beyond what sounds good right now and what do I think my clients would like. So, yeah.
And when we look back to the starting of your firm, Advisor PR, and what was so prior to starting Advisor PR in the early 2000s is when you created the firm and the niche and focusing on the financial services and the advisor?
Yeah, it was January of 2005.
Awesome. So up until that point, what experience did you have in the working or in the corporate world? How did you get into PR? And was that always a passion of yours to be able to define and help brand other businesses and strategize and build out and help them get their defined brand and messaging out?
No, actually, it wasn't. I started Fortune 500. I did PR and advertising for one of the casinos here in Las Vegas and then went to their corporate office for a few years and loved it. I was involved in investor relations, community relations, high profile events, restaurants, photo shoots, movies, things like that. It was a lot of fun, very fast paced, but certainly learned a lot during my time there. So then I took a position with a financial services organization. It was a wholesaler and came in very early stages of their company as the PR and advertising person there. In a very short period of time, the company grew substantially. It was, I think, the fourth employee. By the time I left 21 months later, they had almost 30 employees. They had grown their sales over and over and over again and become very well recognized within the financial services industry. So at the time that I was there, I had noted that there were no PR firms or any marketing firms within the financial services side that were focusing on the advisor. So really they were out on their own in their different markets. And it just so happened at the same time, my grandmother had passed away and had gotten some really bad advice about her money. And I had made that connection. If my grandmother had known that there had been people out there that took a more comprehensive approach or that, wouldn't have had all her money in the stock market in, her late 60s. Like I would have loved to have been able to make that introduction for her. And so it became my mission to help independent financial advisors that are doing right by their clients, right? That weren't just selling products, but were, actually taking a comprehensive approach for them to help them gain a more prominent voice in their community. That became my mission. So in January of 5, I did move back to Las Vegas and was very fortunate. I had made such an impact for my previous employer at the time that, of course, over the course of the 3 days, just driving back to Vegas, I was getting phone calls from different companies who wanted me to come and do the same thing for them that I had done for the previous company and had shared with them my mission to help with the advisors more. And so it just turned into a built-in referral program. I mean, from day one, still to this day, 13 years in the business as of last month, never ever advertised. We've never paid money to any third party in order to get information about my firm out there. It's all been word of mouth, referrals, and just having those networks in place that send their advisors.
So you made this decision because I know a lot of listeners may be on the cusp of starting something or knowing they want to get out of the corporate world. They've got this vision to build something that they know they can grow, but it's a big, big decision. So walking backwards and knowing, okay, I'm good at what I do and I could do it where nobody else is doing it in this niche. Did you, like on that drive, that 3-day drive, had you already made the decision? Did you quit your job and you're less like, I'm all in and I'm going back to Vegas? Or was it, because I'm trying to have a listener think about how you made that decision.
Sure. All right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I made the decision 6 months prior to going out on my own. I at least made it partially. I'd started exploring the thought, what it would take, the costs associated with owning my own business. I had talked to a couple of people that I trusted within the industry and did have verbal commitment from a couple of people that they would be clients of mine if I did go out on my own.
Okay.
So this is before it was public, but yeah, so I had some of those reassurances. I had a lot of really great people in my corner that believed in me and the products and services, what I had to offer. And so I left with that confidence. I also did not take on a significant amount of overhead or anything like that when I first started too. I was very conservative, lived and worked and slept everything in my apartment, when I first moved back to Vegas. But yeah, I had a couple of people lined up in advance. And it just so happened once the word got out and I had shared with people what I was doing, that the referral program started coming over almost immediately. So very fortunate in that sense. I don't think that's the same thing for a lot of business owners, but.
And where were you? You were on the East Coast then? If it was a 3-day drive back, was it? Is that where the firm was that you were previously?
Yeah, it was in the middle of the country.
Okay. Yeah, because I can just imagine it's kind of cool, like going out west, starting your own thing back home. That had to have a little I'm sure a little timidness, but having the ability to know you've got these clients already, it just had to have been a cool drive to just think in terms of you're out there, you're going to go build something, scary, but just kind of that open road, and knowing that you're on to bigger and better and that you're going to be successful. So then you started, it was just you then? It was solo, and you're kind of, at that point, you started building your own messaging, right? So, when you think about what you do now, how did you start building first and foremost your message, your brand, defining that? Was like, where did Advisor PR come from, that name? And, how did you go through that process for yourself?
Well, I've learned a lot over the course of the last, the few years or whatever, the time that I've been doing this. But at the beginning, just structurally, like I knew I didn't want it to be about Alana. Like I knew that I wanted to grow the firm and wanted to eventually have employees and have a larger impact. So that's why I chose a company name that was more specific about who we work for or who we work with and what we do versus it being about me. And it was my reputation initially that, led me to start the business, but I never wanted it to stop with me, right? I wanted to always be bigger than that. So that was really the strategy that went into the selecting of Advisor PR. When I first started, I did have the goal again of providing the PR services to advisors. And very quickly, I noticed that I'd have advisors send me over all of their marketing materials as an example. We needed to build out their media materials to be consistent with their marketing materials, right? You want to have one cohesive message in all the different platforms that you're promoting through. And so I'd have them send over their marketing materials and they were template. Like nothing was unique to them. I had 2 advisors that I worked with the first year and completely unrelated, had no mutual connections as far as I could tell from speaking with them, but they were both using the exact same bio, but it was like a game of Mad Libs. Like they had just changed out city, state, kids' names, things like that, but really had nothing unique about them that was being communicated through it. So very quickly, I learned, okay, not only do they need PR support, but these advisors also need some assistance with the marketing side of things. And so I'd sit down with them and I'd say, okay, tell me what makes you unique. What makes you better? What are we writing in your brochures or your website to communicate this, your value, to clients? And again, it's like crickets. They don't really know. So that's when we started going even further back to really that brand development process, right? So now I'm a big proponent of you've got to first define the brand, define what those messages are, what the look is of that brand. And only when that's in place can you move on to step 2, which is support, right? You need the materials in place to help tell that story, to support the process that you take new clients through. Once that's in place, then you can go out and promote, right? So this would be the PR. This would be lead generation. This could be your digital marketing, whatever it is, right? But now that you've got the brand clear, it's consistent through everything else that you're doing, you have the materials in place to support that brand, you can go out and promote it and feel confident that everything is going to be consistent in the message and in the look. And then the last step that we've added would be the capture. So I saw very quickly that leads were being generated or people were engaging in new relationships with clients or potential clients, but the clients never move forward. So what are you doing to continue to communicate with those prospects that have not yet become clients? And so this is the 4th step in our process. It's the capture. It's that ongoing communication, that continual outreach, not to the point where, they're going to get a restraining order against you or anything like that, but just, wanting to stay top of mind because clearly they had a need at one point for your product or your services. And perhaps that wasn't the right timing for them, right? So that ongoing communication is really critical to make sure that when that need does arise, that they remember you and they called you to help them through that process.
And there was a lot of great nuggets to what you just said. So let me step back a little bit. So in the scope of you defining, in a sense, your process, right? This 4-step process that's easy to have your team convey. It's easy for a potential of one of your clients to understand what you're delivering. So, those out there listening, if you have a process, which we all do, and it doesn't matter what type of business that you're in, we all have a process. The key in what Alana's done and what she preaches to her clients, and in our financial services industry, it is like, how do you separate yourself from somebody else out there? Because in a sense, we all do the same thing. So in this case, define, support, promote, and capture. That in itself is a great vehicle to show that you can help them create their own process because you've already have one for yourself. And it clearly kind of defines and delineates the value that you're bringing. And I think it simplifies it for the potential client of yours. And then that's the first step there. So obviously, if you didn't have a process, how can you go out and say that you can help somebody else? So I think that's great. And I'm looking, on the website itself, it's clearly defined. I like the color codes there. And I know this didn't happen overnight, right? This for you was an ongoing over the last 13 years. You continually modifying and tweaking and editing your process to make it better and better as the industry changes.
Of course. Yeah, I think any business owner would do that. The services that we offer, those 4 areas, those have been in place since the onset of the company. How we do each of those services has evolved. So I'm a process-oriented person. So even from like branding, I have a process that I follow for that. For marketing collateral, I have a process, right? So in my team, all of us are on the same page. You're getting the same process, the same quality, no matter who you're working with, right? For anything. It's evolved though, because 13 years ago, businesses, we didn't have Twitter. We hardly had Facebook, right? People were just transitioning. They were just really getting websites, a lot of small businesses. And they were just now starting to transition from brochure-like websites to more interactive type of sites. And so as even the whole industry, the marketing side of things, not just the financial industry, but you have to evolve to adapt to new technologies in the financial industry, new regulations, things like that, just to keep you relevant, not only for the services that you're providing your clients, but your clients need to, stay relevant in the services that they're providing their clients. So I think that's business for you. You're constantly evolving, but the foundation, I think, is really what's made the big difference in us being able to adapt so easily to changes.
When you look back as you started bringing on these clients and figuring out that what you're helping them do, that this thing's going to work. Do you remember then in 05 or 06, like the first person that you hired? How was that for you as a solo practitioner going in and then having to bring somebody on board? Was that a hard step for you to take both, economically and then also to maybe have to delegate?
Oh, yes. My first employee I brought on in 2006, about 15 months after I started the company. And it was just sheer necessity. But that person worked as an administrative type of role as she learned the processes, right? The ins and outs of what I did. So she was in many ways like an apprentice for the first year or two, would support me on projects where, on the steps that anybody with direction could potentially do, while she learned the unique skills or the unique things that I was doing to facilitate a project. So of course it was very scary, to somebody else is going to depend on you for their own livelihood, but it worked out. I mean, that, you have to, payroll now becomes a thing and paying those taxes and, all of that was a bit of a learning curve. Remember, I never worked for an agency. I just built one, right, from scratch. So there was, time tracking, just a lot of things I had to learn through the process. But I hired right. I had a really strong person with me those first few years, and they brought a lot of value.
And you flash forward now, like 13 years later, and what does Advisor PR look like now with the team you have on board? How many people? And How are the how is it managing the business and managing your people? Is that been something that you've enjoyed, or is it you find some difficulty in it?
When they're good people, I love it. Like with any company, we've brought on some very strong people over the years. And we've also brought on some people because we had a need to fulfill, and brought on some people that weren't the right fit. And managing people that don't want to adapt to your internal processes and procedures, or want to reinvent the wheel when the wheel's working just fine. Some of those types of things certainly pose challenges over the years, but now we're 6 strong. I have people that can sort of lead their divisions, if you will. I have a marketing director and a PR director. So while I'm overseeing kind of the big picture with everything, they can run with the PR programs are all done with the PR department, and the marketing, they have obviously the skill set and the authority, right, to be able to make decisions and move projects forward. So I'm still clearly very involved, but not to the point where I'm managing every aspect. All of that's been defined. We certainly have a process for just about everything over here. And so they've got clear guidance and direction on what they need to do just to keep moving that ball forward.
And, with you having, I'm sure over the years, trials and tribulations, just so like we all do, having that ability to talk to a financial services owner, which I assume is the bulk of the clients that you work with, the owner, the rainmaker, the founder of the firm, you can feel their pain, you can put yourself in their shoes, and that helps, I'm sure, in developing that relationship with them. And listeners, full disclosure, Alana and I not only known each other for quite a while, and we'll talk about how we actually got to know each other and some of the way you've helped grow your company and get your messaging out by partnering with other firms that are out there doing good things. But as working with you for a number of years, I just felt you got it, and that was something that you got in the sense like what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Versus if I went out there and said, okay, I want PR, I want to get into the news, I want to get into the newspaper, but you're dealing with a local firm that doesn't, they don't work just solely with one niche. They're not going to get our industry. So I'm going to spend half the time trying to explain to them what we do, who we are, what we need to get out there, what we need to message. So, for those of you that are financial advisors and are trying to figure out how to get the messaging out there, I think it's so important to work with somebody that gets it, that understands it, that's built into the world that we live in and not having to reinvent that. And that's, one of the values that I saw with you guys. And, PR, it's a very hard thing to quantify sometimes, and I'm sure you battle this with trying to quantify your value. And in any business itself, especially ours, sometimes it's like in our business, I know if I bring a client in through a referral or we did a client workshop, right, I can quantify that. I paid X, I got these many clients in, and they brought in this revenue. Isn't PR one of the difficult parts is quantifying that, because there's so many intangibles that go into it, but there's so much value there, right? That's persuading, that building that credibility, that getting that messaging out. So what would you say to somebody who's kind of on the fence there of, well, I want that, but I don't want to pay for it, and I don't know if it's going to have a return on investment?
I would tell them to Google their name. And when they don't see anything come up whatsoever, except for their own website, then they should give us a call. I always call PR, it's kind of like the performance enhancer of all of the other marketing activities you have going on. People need to leverage it, right? Like you may be in the Wall Street Journal one day, but for the rest of your career, you can say that you were in the Wall Street Journal. Of course, you're going to want to refresh this every once in a while, right? But it has like a level of credibility that you can't buy, like you can't run an ad in the Wall Street Journal and say you were in the Wall Street Journal. Like wouldn't fly from a regulatory standpoint, but that's just a blatant lie, right? So the fact that media has already vetted you, they've already confirmed that you are the expert that you claim to be, and so much so that they're using you in their reporting. That's a level of credibility that you really can't find anywhere else. But yeah, in terms of quantifying it needs to be ingrained into all of your other marketing. So in the example of being in a prominent newspaper, incorporating that into your bio, sharing that information with people that are just learning about your firm or coming to a workshop or whatever it may be, you have to leverage that, right? So people can see it, because they'll have the same impression about you as the expert, your credibility, even if the article took place 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, whatever, like it's going to last.
Here's a question I kind of always ask myself, and I think I've talked to you on it in the past too. But so, for instance, let's say we have an owner of a firm, whether it's financial services or whatnot, and they've got a lot of press. They've got into publications, let's say Wall Street Journal, they were on the news. So we've got Twitter, we've got Facebook, we've got LinkedIn, we've got email. I always grapple with, how do I get my message out there that here's where I was and here's my messaging, but without like beating your own chest. But that is something that you want to push it out there. But what would you say to somebody that says, I don't want to look like an egotistical maniac that's just promoting the heck out of myself?
Well, you have a company, right? And I'm sure the company has all the social platforms. So being it positioned as company news versus you tooting your own horn is one way to go about doing it. I mean, do all of the emails that you send out come from you personally, or does the company send out announcements and newsletters and updates like that?
Yeah. So from our standpoint, company-wise, so you're saying it may be more effective to use the company Twitter, the company LinkedIn, and then maybe sharing that from your personal?
Yeah, I think that's good. I don't think that it's bad to be proud of your accomplishments. I think that it creates a lot of comfort and value for those people that are connected to you. So I'd have to dig into this a little further in your scenario, but let me just speak high level third person. So if your social channels are used predominantly for business purposes, sharing this is only going to create greater value in the eyes of your clients and prospects, right? I think more people may feel like that they're overstating it as if their social channels are predominantly used for personal reasons. And if that's the case, then I think putting it on the business page and sharing it that way is a great way to go about doing it. But I would I would certainly make it available to people to find on their own. So as you're talking through the website, a lot of our clients have reels that they'll play like in their waiting rooms at their offices, their lobbies. If they have client events, they'll run those reels there, just kind of as a background as everybody's coming in and getting their food and taking seats and whatnot. So it's on display, but it's not in your face.
Yeah, that's been really effective for us. And, the highlight reel that you guys actually helped us put together, you take a day like last Monday where the Dow and the S&P was down record levels. And, we have our lounge where the client comes in and kind of relaxes beforehand or fills out things that they need to. And we want them to have an experience. Well, if I've got on CNBC or Bloomberg and we're seeing just blood red across the board, that's not a good environment to start a meeting.
No.
So we looked at that. And even if things are really bright green, the type of portfolios that we're going to create, we're not going to keep up with the S&P. So it's kind of, you looked on either way. So we made the decision, especially for newer clients or prospective clients, is that through our YouTube channel, which incorporates a lot of our media, a lot of our webinars, a lot of things that show the value, right? We like to push out as much value as possible and then allow people to go on their own to learn about what we do. And it's a lot different marketing than it was when you started this in 2005, where it was like static website, and you maybe updated it every year. That's not going to work anymore.
No.
A different cycle there. But that reel that you were talking about, or having a YouTube channel, is such a great way to build your brand and identity. And then take away that emotional of them thinking that, if you didn't do that, they're in the meeting with you and they're thinking about how the Dow is just plummeting. And that's just not a good place to be in our world. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what business that you're in, you got to think about that client experience. And that's a great way for you to be able to showcase who you are and take away that emotional that may have a negative effect on the meeting.
Yeah. No, I think that's strong. I'd also add to that. So that's from the leveraging standpoint of PR. When any business, right, your prospects, before they choose to move forward with you, specifically a service-based business, they're going to do a Google search, right? They're getting ready to entrust you with all of their money or their estate plan or their taxes or whatever it may be. First thing they're going to do is go to Google, right? And do a search of your name. So you're talking about having fresh content on your website. That's going to help you stay higher in the search engines. PR, this is different than any form of advertising. PR, every single time that you work with the media, even if it's a traditional print newspaper you're interviewed in, there's always an online component to it. right? So when somebody does a search of your name, your company name, every single one of those media opportunities that you participated in are going to come up in that Google search. So go back to the client experience before they even walk in the doors. They do a search of you, wanting to get to know you a little bit better, and pages and pages and pages of quality interviews are coming up, right, that you've been featured in. I know you can't put a price on that. So talk about quantifying it. But wow, I mean, there is no hurdle to overcome in terms of credibility. Again, going back to media's already vetted you and confirms that you are the expert. So why are they going to question it?
So true. That's that persuading, getting that out there, that messaging out there so somebody feels confident, comfortable. And that doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. That's just going to give them that confidence to meet with you. Mm-hmm. But you still got to have your own systems, processes, and you have to know your stuff. And it doesn't matter financial services or anything else. You can only do so much on that end, but you've got to then
deliver.
Deliver and act on what you say you're going to do. So if I'm a business owner and I think about, okay, I've got my messaging down, I've got my branding down, and now I want to get out to the media. If I don't have a firm that has the relationships, like an advisor PR that's building relationships with publications and authors and bloggers, et cetera, for the last 13 years, is it possible for me to get out there to say, hey, I am a specialist in this, or I know X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to bring value to your audience? Would that be an uphill battle without a professional team that's got those relationships?
I mean, yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but it's not necessarily just because of our relationships. Two things. First, you're going to take a generalist approach. So you're going to reach out to, say, a reporter in your local town. Hi, I'm a financial advisor and I specialize in retirement. So what? So many other ones do the same thing. Like, that's not the hook or the angle that you need to share. Like, you need to bring something of value, of insight, something unique to the media outlet in order to pique their interest. It's different how you approach TV versus print. It's different how you approach resource opportunities versus creating the news. You have an announcement. So any small business trying to go at it on their own, is it possible? It's certainly possible, but there's a lot that needs to go into building your story to generate the interest needed to get you that sort of opportunity. The second point to that is going back to like a generalist firm. So you talked a bit about hiring a PR firm in your local area and having to spend half of your time, communicating to them what it is that you do in the types of articles that you'd like to be interviewed for. Their level of understanding is only going to go so far. So this is where we've almost had to fix things for people in different markets. They're going to go to media and say, I have somebody that can talk about finance. I don't know exactly, like something with retirement, whatever. And so now it's on the media person, like, okay, well, if he can talk about finance, well, we're having a back to school shopping segment coming up. Maybe they can talk about how to save money for that. Well, that's not the opportunity that's going to put you in the best light, right? Or I've seen how to pay off your credit card debts or whatever. Like, those aren't the topics that you specialize in. But somebody that doesn't understand that could actually be negative to the brand, that could detract from it rather than build it further, they're just looking for the win, right? They're just looking to get you something, anything. And they're not going to really care if it's the right opportunity for you. Right. And you're excited. I mean, I've seen advisors, they're so excited by it. They're being interviewed for pet insurance on a segment in their local NBC affiliate. But what value does that create for you? So somebody contacts your firm wanting to know more information about pet insurance. Are you really going to be able to help them? So just being very clear on the types of stories that you want to participate in, and I would say be empowered to say no. Like, if it's not the right thing, don't do it. I know I probably just went a couple different directions after your first point. I think you were asking me just more about, can somebody do it on their own? Yeah, you can give it a go. Just make sure you have like a strong angle, a strong topic to offer, not a me too, but something unique that you can provide insight to, and know the outlets. I mean, it's the same as sales. I mean, you have to know who your client is, and you have to know all the details about them, you also need to know who your media contacts are and what types of stories they cover and what angles they take. I see a lot of people want to approach media that like, get this reporter to cover something that like about this product I'm offering or whatever. Like that's not even at all the types of stories they cover, right? So it just, now you become a nuisance to them. Like if you aren't giving them content that's of value to what they particularly do.
Well, the other thing too, and those are great points, is that let's say a firm like yours, or they just stumble upon being able to get a media appearance. You have to know within you, and I know practice makes a lot better performance, but maybe not everybody's cut to be on live TV, right? There's recorded different than live. So one of the things that I think could hurt you again is that if you do get that spot, if you haven't prepared and you haven't gone in knowing your stuff, it could ultimately crush you where you'll never get that opportunity again. And there's never any, first, to have that first impression. So that's going to be part of your reel. Google doesn't forget. You're going to want to promote it. And if you kind of, crap the bed, then that's going to hurt you long term. So what do you have for advice for somebody who is going out there for the first time, has never really done something like that, which is being on live TV? Give us 1, 2, 3 tips that they can utilize to prepare so that they can be as good a guest as you could be in your first live appearance.
That's a great question. So I would say don't let it be your first interview ever, right? Like you should at least have done some phone interviews with print reporters. That would give you that experience of the back and forth, having the conversation with the media person. What are they asking you to clarify for them? You also, not all businesses, but the financial industry, there are some limitations to what you can and can't say when working with the media. And I think you just need to have some experience in being in an interview and knowing how to respond that's appropriate based off of regulatory restrictions, financial advisors. For those of your listeners that aren't in the financial industry, that's all I'm alluding to. But having that experience once or twice with a print reporter on the phone prior to going in studio, I think that's key. When you're ready for the TV, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but many of these interviews are highly scripted, not word for word per se, but the questions that are going to be asked of you in the interview are prepared in advance. And so it gives you the opportunity to lay out what those points are that you want to make. Don't memorize them. You still need to be conversational in a TV interview, not a robot, but at least you can work on how you would respond to each of those questions. And then from there, I would just advise people, just practice. Practice. You've got video cameras on your computer. Just practice yourself, delivering the answers to those questions and go back and watch yourself, right? And see like, oh, maybe I fidget too much with my hair, or I, shouldn't wear those dangly bracelets when I'm on TV, things like that. You'll be able to pick up very easily if you just give yourself a little time to prepare on, at least before that first one.
Yeah, preparation is key. I think I've done now 7 or 8, and I still always have I think it's normal, have a little butterflies beforehand. But I still remember 3-4 years ago, my first one, it was, Good Morning Arizona, and Saturday morning, and it was live. I still remember, there's 3 cameras, the lights are coming down, and boom, we're live. And you could tell from watching that video, for the first question that's asked me, you could tell I'm nervous. But then you kind of, from my side, I just relaxed. I knew my stuff. I started rapping with them. And you could tell when somebody's relaxed on there. And that's when it's more than anything knowing your stuff. You're not going to be perfect. You don't have to say everything to the T. Nobody's going to know that, but you got to be strong. You've got to be confident. The other thing too is understand what on the camera, what you should wear. And I know you guys have some great stuff on that for the clients that you work with. Those of you out there that don't have a PR firm, you can Google it, but definitely make sure you know what to wear and what not to wear. Because no matter how good your conversation is with them or your points, if somebody's fixated on your tie because it's the wrong color and it's bringing out this HD, with these HD TVs, they're going to not listen to you at all. So that's something that I think every time you go in, just make sure that you understand your wardrobe as well as your talking points.
It's a very good point. Yeah, females especially, the earrings, the jewelry can be a distraction. Don't wear too short of a skirt because when you cross your legs, it shows a lot of your thigh. Just things like that you have to think about in advance. It may look great for a client meeting, but on camera, it's not going to put you in the best light. So, yeah.
One thing too that I recommend, and I don't always get this done, but if you have somebody there with you, or if you could just borrow somebody who's at the TV studio, is try to get a shot of you in front of the camera, but from them behind the camera, so that they can see. And that's a great social media post, is to kind of see you in action there, versus just using a snapshot or a thumbnail of the actual interview itself. So those are the type of things that you want to, as you said earlier, make sure you get the full resolve of what you're putting into it, and get the full promotion of it. Be able to put it out, and it can be, once you do something like that, it can be used multiple times. You could take little snippets and you can post it at a different time. It could be even a year later. Nobody's going to really know that it was just shot 1 year ago if the topic is relevant, which normally the topics are going to be relevant unless it's something in particular, like last week's market volatility or the changes due to the Tax Cut and Job Act, things of that nature. So those are things, as you said earlier, leverage. Don't forget about that leverage.
Yeah, before, during, and after an interview.
One other thing is, as we talk about this credibility, is from the standpoint of, and it doesn't have to just be a financial advisor, but what's your take on writing a book, getting your message out there, getting published? Is that something that a business owner should look at doing if they have the dedication to it and they have a clear, concise message that they want to convey out?
Yeah, as long as they have a unique message that they can communicate in a book. It's an expensive and time-consuming process. Most advisors that I've seen have gone the route of hybrid publishing. So there's 3 different ways you can do it. It's self-publishing, hybrid publishing, or working with an actual publisher. The publisher retains the rights to your work if you go through a publisher, but they pay for all the printing and the promotional fees that go into getting the book out on shelves. A hybrid publisher can assist you with the distribution of it, with some of the marketing, some of the benefits that you get from a traditional publisher, but you're paying for the production cost, the shipping, the storage, things like that associated with the book. And then self-publishing is you can print on demand, really, and just have that available just to your clients if you choose to do that. All of them have benefits and drawbacks. I actually wrote a blog on this. If anybody's interested in comparing the 3 different ways to publish a book, there is a blog on this topic on our website.
And we will have that in the show notes, everybody. So there'll be a link to not only Alana's page, but a couple other items there, especially this blog as well.
Yeah. So I think if somebody has a unique story to tell or a thoughtful process, that they take people through and has the time or has the ability to be able to illustrate that in a way that's compelling and people will want to read your book, then sure. Yeah, I think it's great. Do I think it's necessary if you don't have all of those pieces? I wouldn't just try to create something just for the sake of creating something if it's not going to do any substantial benefit to your business. I mean, it is very expensive.
And it's time consuming, but once the product is done, and if it, and the other thing is you've got to be proud of your product, because if you put that time in, you spend the money, and then you kind of do a half-assed job, or you're not completely confident with it, you can't take that back. And that could almost be a negative. You would think it's only positive. I'm a published author, but the fact is, if it's not up to par, then it actually hurts your credibility, even though not everybody's going to read it. You and I both know on those kind of standpoints is that, they'll look at a chapter or 2, but they may not read the whole thing. So just be careful there and really set the standard of dedicating yourself to it. And if you have a good message to get out and maybe a ghostwriter that can help you put it all together, just make sure that you're not doing it just to do it.
Yep. Be thoughtful about it for sure.
So, as we wind down today, I just wanted to get your thoughts on, real quickly, the change, the evolution of what social media has done and what businesses need to look at, and what some of the things that maybe you do to help your partners stay top of mind and to kind of unclutter themselves in this cluttered environment with Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So, real briefly, what are some tips or some things that you've seen that have been beneficial for companies to be able to get their messaging out and separate themselves from all the other messages that are out there?
Well, I think it's kind of a comprehensive approach here. I mean, certainly all of the social channels are important tools to distribute information. I would tell people to not be 100% promotional with the content that they're distributing through the different social platforms. You certainly want to have some promotions within it. Maybe 10 to 20% of all posts that you put out can be an offer or promoting an event or things like that. But valuable content is good to share, especially if it's applicable to the people in your network. I always love when you're in that content, even better. But the idea here, at least mostly in the financial, every business is different and has a different take on social. My husband's business is an example. It's a music technology company. Social is a huge component of their business because it fits their demographic. In the financial services side, we've seen it be effective, more so is a mode to do additional background, right? Maybe they connect with your firm and they just continue to see the types of things that you're putting out there. So using it as a platform to stay connected, to illustrate your expertise, to share insights on maybe worthy causes or other things going on in the community, and to occasionally promote an offer or an event. If you're doing blogs, if you're doing like a regular column or anything like that, it's a great way just to have that consistent channel of getting that information out, promoting it beyond just the people that are coming to the site in order to gather it. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things you can be doing with the different social channels. I'm seeing video be more and more effective. I'm also seeing a lot of advisors putting the text within the videos. You've probably seen that being a popular trend on social these days. People don't have time to push play on their videos, but they will sit there and watch the words scroll across the bottom of a video for 60 seconds.
So true. Well, and I think also, that standpoint of video and the power of, let's say, your Facebook network. And, in our industry, we kind of look at those channels and we tried Instagram. That didn't make any sense. It's not going to really fit our target, which is financial services. So, Twitter, we have a company page. I enjoy to have my own individual page, which helps kind of put personal stuff as well. So that's always been fun for me. But I think Facebook for a lot of businesses is still the holy grail, even though they've changed some things around. I mean, you think about the power you said earlier of these videos that you're starting to see more and more of. Market volatility in our industry last week. Well, the old way was what? I got to get on the phone and call my 75 clients and make sure that they know, find out, get their pulse, keep them from jumping off the bridge, and just know that we're here for them. And we still want to do that. But think about the power of being able to do a video on our side, making sure it's compliant, but being able to get that 1-minute video out through your network, through email, and get out to your 75 clients. That's the kind of thing that they now know, all right, I didn't talk to Andrew, but I know his team's watching over us. And that's so critical in a service business, especially when there's certain areas like in our business that can change on a dime and our clients want us to know that we're here for them. So I think that's just going to get from that standpoint better and better. And I think the technology is there where it's really easy to be able to create those. And if you're an advisor out there and you're not doing that, that's something you should definitely be looking at as a way to expand your reach, both to clients as well as prospects.
Yeah. Well, different messages for different types of people in your network, right? So like you just shared, it was client driven versus something that you'd want to put out for the public. So just keep that in mind too. Like anything on the social, most businesses have it open, for anybody to be able to see. And so if there are videos that you're creating and pushing out that are intended just for clients, then you may want to consider a private group on Facebook versus just opening it up to everybody. Like if there is sensitive information that you're sharing or advice before somebody hires you in that instance.
And do you recommend then with the technology of whether like an email technology for your advisors as you're trying to help them get their systems in place, what's been kind of the top choice there for you to recommend for companies to get their messaging out there on a systematic basis to clients, to prospects, to niching it out?
Infusionsoft is certainly the most robust email marketing system that we've used. They're headquartered there in Phoenix. But most, I think, financial advisors specifically, it really just depends on the volume of digital marketing that you're doing. Like a constant contact or an eye contact can work just fine if you're just getting communication out on a less frequent basis. And Infusionsoft allows for you to build sequences, right? So when A happens, then B happens, and then we automatically send an email, and then we're triggered to give them a call, and et cetera, and gives you a lot of segmenting abilities. I mean, by anything that you can think of, there's all these custom fields, ways to pull lists and, reach out to people, but it's involved. And I would probably only recommend it for like a marketing company or somebody that is very tech oriented on any sort of like communication that involves a lot of digital components to it versus just your starting off small business, if you will.
Yeah, it sounds like client journeys or prospect journey where you can have them go down these different paths. I think that is the wave of the future, as well as automating it so it's not on your team to be able to remember to send prospect A this email. And then 3 days later, he needs to get this email. And then if he does one thing or replies to it, he needs to get that. That's impossible. So Infusionsoft, or I think Pardot is another one. They're the more robust ones. We actually, funny, you mentioned that. I have a call with Infusionsoft this week to learn more about how they can tie into our system. So I'm glad you mentioned them because we've heard good things about them.
Mm-hmm. It's very robust, though.
Hey, we like robust.
Yeah, I think we're using 10% of the capabilities with it. No, not really, but it's got a lot of different functionality. So, and I only say this because I don't want people to get overwhelmed. Like I find that a lot of companies don't take the steps forward to put more efficient processes in place or automate some of these things because it's bulky, like it's time consuming, it's intimidating right up front. And so if you don't have that level of need, there are more simplistic, less expensive technologies that you can implement that would be maybe an hour of your time to set up versus a few days, right? So don't get caught up in the, being overwhelmed with it all.
Yeah. I mean, Constant Contact, MailChimp, they can work perfectly. It's just don't use Outlook. That's just Constant Contact, maybe $50 to $100 a month. Well worth it. Get your template set up and then, get it is on autopilot, because if you get it in Infusionsoft or if you get something that's sophisticated, and you don't spend the time, then you're just wasting your money. Yeah. You're not going to use it. So I know we went through a lot of great stuff today. I could probably have you on for another hour. So thanks for for spending the time here. So as we recap, the key is before you can go out promoting yourselves, business owners, is define your message, define your brand. Whether you do that on your own or you work with an outside firm like Advisor PR, it's probably beneficial to work with an outside firm that maybe knows your industry but isn't in the weeds with you, to make sure that you're making good decisions, you're framing your wording and your mission and everything from that to the colors, to the pictures, to the tagline. So I think from that standpoint, define the brand, your messaging, and then it's time to get the messaging out there, and doing that in a manner of lots of different things that we talked about, which was a lot. And I know we have, there's a white paper that you have that the listeners will be able to download from our episode page, and walk us through what that would look like, or what the basic gist of that white paper is.
The white paper is my 4-step process, right? So this is what we've built upon over the last 13 years. It explains really what's involved in each of the 4 steps we talked about. So the defining, creating the unique message, the brand, the support, right? So what do you need to tell your story to support your brand? So your websites, one-pagers, brochures, things like that. And then step 3 is promote, once you have all that in place. The last thing you want to do is go out and promote your company or an offer and then not have anything to back it up, right? Like where people can't interact with your website, or there's nothing for them to download. There's no call to action for them to take. So that's why you want to make sure you have all that support material in place. And then once you go out, you're promoting, you're building your database, you're getting interest. Now you need to capture them, right? So this is the ongoing marketing communication. So we talked a bit about the social media profiling, or the channels. We talked a bit about the Infusionsoft, or, that ongoing email marketing. Those are just a couple of components associated with that capture process. So the white paper is a good resource, give you some guidelines, whether in your financial services or music technology. It's still the same process that you would need to follow to be most impactful with your marketing communications.
Awesome. So listeners, that will be in the show notes, as well as the ability for you to put your email address in to download that white paper. And the nice thing is that although you're segmented in your niches, in most cases, the financial advisor, I think this process rings true for any business. So, use that as your baseline. And as always, Alana and her team will be there if you have questions, or if you do have somebody that's maybe not in your industry, but somebody who's in the financial services industry that could really just use a second opinion on their branding, their messaging, or just going through some of the goals that they have to continue to build their messaging out there. I know firsthand that her team will be there every step of the way to offer good guidance. And if you do partner with them, they will show results, which is the key in everything. So, Alana, awesome stuff today. I think the listeners got a lot out of it. I got a lot out of it, which I always do. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you at some industry events here soon.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Your Wealth and Beyond. To get access to all the resources mentioned during today's podcast, please visit baintree.com/podcast. And be sure to tune in later this month for another episode of Your Wealth and Beyond.
Investment advice is offered through Baintree Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Insurance and annuity products are offered separately through Baintree Planning Group, LLC. Baintree is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute legal or tax advice. You should talk to a qualified professional before making any decisions about your personal situation.